All right, hello.
Howdy.
Howdy there, partner.
How are you doing?
I'm well. Okay, I'm a couple more beers in than I plan to be.
The panel was that fun, huh?
It was pretty fun, actually. I like uh, I like Dr. Heem's style of moderation.
Yeah, he's a nice dude.
He had his own input, but it wasn't quite as bad as the Cuba Guy T-shirt. All right.
Um, I've never had the pleasure of being on one of his panels, but I think he's a pretty fair guy when it comes to this stuff.
Well, this was his second one, I think. So
a good precedent to start with. Well,
right.
we're just living it up with Diablo right now. But you said you wanted to talk about some stuff?
Yeah, I really just had some stuff. I guess like mostly just from the Freer Festival. Like I just had things on. There was just things on my mind, and just things that like from going to the Freer Festival. It was just kind of like. So let's see here. I don't know where you're gonna start. There's some stuff that like we're probably gonna disagree on. So I don't know if you want to like
Well,
disagree first,
I think we have,
then we can.
yeah, we probably have a few
Go
disagreements.
later, but
you know, no matter how bad this goes, I just want to say it was nice seeing you for your Future Fest. So, I hope you had a good time.
Yeah, yeah, the same to you. Like I feel like I painted this picture, and most of it probably just comes from my leanings of like, oh well, yeah, socialism is bad, socialist bad. We're gonna disagree on everything. And I was like, I gotta be super. I was just saying this to like my mod and chat. Like, yeah, I felt like it was gonna be like super awkward because like Dylan invited me in, and I don't want to like I don't want to be like an asshole and like. But then and I'm just gonna have to bite my tongue and but it was like it wasn't even really that big of a deal. I think you realize like I think a lot of it has to do with like the COVID and like the lockdowns and stuff, as well as just generally everybody being in their own echo chambers on YouTube and stuff. But like you just are like on the algorithms, and you just think that like yeah, I could never be in the room with these people, but then you're in the room with people that disagree with you, on a daily basis every day. So, and you
Yeah,
just realize that like sharing a human experience and just being in the same country is you have a lot more in common there than you do.
Well, I think there are, appropriate and inappropriate times to be a partisan for your political positions, and there's probably not much gain that you can get from just being like a huge asshole to people in public, like in person, to nothing,
Yeah.
But at least online to an audience, there's whatever benefit you could accrue from trying to spread good positions.
Yeah. So I don't know. We can probably get this one out of the way because I know we'll disagree, but I feel like it's not that serious with that. So like I've been trying to hear out because I'm not an anti-vaxxer, okay, but I'm definitely against like the mandates to a degree. All right, like I'm like I work in a healthcare field, so I get it for that. I get it for the military. I get it for like nursing homes and hospitals and stuff. But for me, it just doesn't seem like the data has been, or that it's been parsed out enough that like that it's a serious enough thing to mandate for. And I felt this way for a while, but I didn't say anything because I didn't want to be like I didn't want to be encouraging like anti-vax arguments and shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's killed more than like any other like plague or pandemic in all of American history, right? Seems like it's definitely justified some pretty extreme responses, just sort of by virtue of that, don't you think?
isn't it isn't it extremely like similar to like all of the responses we had to like the flu and stuff though? And like we never
No,
never did the same
we're way
severity
above
for
that.
the flu.
No, flu is seasonal, and we do have flu shots. I mean, we do have that. We don't have mandated flu shots though, because it like flu doesn't have the same. What's the term? E number? The N? The number of like the rate of virality multiplication, or to put it another way, like flus don't become pandemics. So R value. Thank you. Yeah.
It's the way that the virus evolves. Is that the difference between this and or
Yeah,
the
it's
rate that it evolves.
yeah, it's that if the flu is left on its own, where nobody gets any vaccines, it flares up and it dies out seasonally, you know. But with COVID, it has a high enough rate of replication with how the virus multiplies and spreads and stays on living tissue and stuff, that it could be like sort of possibly an almost perpetual problem unless it's snuffed out entirely. So mandating flu vaccines would be like once a year we lower the number from like X to Y. But mandating COVID is like we might have no way of lowering this number unless we all do this. Like we need to we need to in order to stem the flow, essentially.
So then, okay, because another part of like my like pushback or like part of my questioning to some of the mandates has been like, well, you know, the vaccines are at the rate that they are, they're at the availability that they are. If you feel like, you know, you're at risk, then get the vaccine. And what does it stop someone else? But then I guess that's what that's sort of what you were like talking about, is that people who are unvaccinated and not getting it and are spreading it, because like I got it and I got vaccinated because I work in a nursing home. So it's
Right.
like I wasn't necessarily planning on getting it though before I switched to working in this nursing home, just because I had already gotten it. But so the way it evolves is different than even the flu and everything, is because it seems like there's always another flu and it's always targeting similar age groups and like
Yeah, the flu
comorbidities or
has
whatever.
different variants every single year, but it seems like the way in which the flu develops, spreads, and then eventually dies down just seems to be a part of the cyclical process of that type of disease emerging and unemerging. But it's not like a plague, like we've never really talked about the flu as a pandemic, except when we do get those rare strains, like the Spanish flu back a century ago or so,
Yeah,
where
well, and
we had
well,
sort of
even more
similar issues.
recently, there was some spookiness whenever we had like the H1N1, and we like it was like the bird flu, and then the swine flu or whatever.
If those killed millions of people all around the world, we probably would have had the exact same thing happen, right? I mean, I would have been for it. It seemed like those disease kind of, there was a potential for that big plague and it pattered out, it didn't work. But if it had, then I would have been totally on board with exactly the same level of strictness, far more strictness than we actually saw in this country.
Yeah, and I'm not like too like hard set on this because I don't know. I still think you should get like vaccinated. Like if you don't have anything that's going to keep you, if you don't have anything that's there's no risk to it. Besides, the only thing that I'm still that I would super push back on is probably like kids right now, and that's really it. Just because, like, I think they stopped it like in a couple countries overseas, but I guess I just don't know how. It feels like with the way it was covered in the beginning that it's led to the situation that we're in now, and I don't know how we really get out of this.
What do you mean? I mean, we
Like,
vaccinate kids for pretty much everything else, right? I mean, we
no,
vaccinate kids when they're
I
like
just meant
3 or whatever.
I meant I guess like rhetorically, or the way like we're covering these things, or like because it seems like it coming from someone who's on the right, like it seems like, and I'm pretty moderate. I think I'm pretty damn close to the center, but I know people who are much more like my fucking neighbor, for example, like legitimately believes that the that the vaccine is for. He believes the conspiracy. I don't know what the full thing is, but basically that like this is for a
The microchips?
not that one. The one it's a selective or whatever the fuck. It's it's like eugenics basically, like that that like they're just
Like
trying to get
Depop?
people to get vaccinated
it kills
because
it
yeah,
makes you
like that
infertile?
basically it's gonna yeah, it's population control or some shit like that.
I can't help with
He
that,
told
right?
my wife that, and I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, I know you can't help that. I'm just saying, like, I don't know how to get some people out of that situation, and that's part of the reason why I don't talk about it a lot, except for like, you know, like I wanted to talk to like you and Destiny about it and just get your like opinions, and I've talked to Dylan about it like privately, but like I don't want to put it out there so that someone can take like anything that I say and use it in a way to promote those kind of like stupid ass ideas.
It just, I
But
mean,
I am genuinely curious as well.
it seems like I don't really know if there's a hardline solution to that because there's always been a lot of conspiracism on the right? I mean, think of FEMA camps
Yeah.
under Obama. It's always like, this, that, or the other is actually a plan by the Illuminati to destroy, civilization by doing this or the other thing. And I mean, I don't know if like interpersonally there's anything to really do about it. I think the best thing that we can really do is just make life as inconvenient as possible for people who don't vaccinate. Even if they hate it, I still think they should be vaccinated. Like they can be miserable about it and bitch on Facebook or whatever. But it seems like mandating it's about the only way to get out of this at this point. Because even if like say you're like a young guy and you're healthy and you get COVID and you get no long-term effects afterwards, which you have a 30% chance of getting, by the way. Pain, erectile dysfunction, like internal organ damage, headaches. But say you avoid all that, your body was still a little petri dish for the virus to not only spread to others, but potentially mutate and form a new variant. That's why we saw a huge surge in deaths with the Delta variant. It seemed like things were going okay, like our curve was going way down. Then the Delta variant is significantly, more viral.
Yeah.
So it's like we can do this forever, right? Like maybe the Delta variant dies down, but maybe some dumb fuck in I don't know, Mississippi goes ahead and shares a drink at a bar, and his body ends up being the place where, the Lambda variant, no, we already have a Lambda variant, I don't know, the Epsilon variant or some shit gets formed, and maybe that's the even bigger issue. It just seems like it's an all or nothing kind of problem.
I just like because I like see a lot of or hear a lot of like the way this is talked about, especially like because I'm in South Carolina, it's like a really red state, right? So like I hear the way people are talking about this, and it's like a lot of people aren't. There's a lot of people that are similar in a similar position than me, or at least not very far away from it, where it's like, look, I'm gonna get the vaccine because whatever. Like it's I play video games. Because anything give me a boost, I'm here for it. Like fuck it. Like and it was like, yeah, I'm gonna go work in healthcare, and I don't want to feel even before there was a mandate. Like I got the vaccine because
hold your thought. I'm sorry,
healthcare.
just 1 second. Wait, 1 second.
Are you gaming?
Sorry, just cat maintenance. My bad.
Okay. But like I had already planned on getting it because I'm working in a nursing home, and I don't know, I would feel like shit if like there was some kind of like outbreak, and then I just thought to myself like, oh man, like, did I fucking do that? Like, and before I was working basically entirely from home. Like before COVID, I was doing like event marketing, and then I was able to like transition to like working from home. But I just wanted to like change it up, and so like I understand it for that position, and I think a lot of people do. But like, oh, that's what I was saying. Sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. But yeah, I think there's a lot of people that are really close to my position that would, I guess that what like this isn't going to move. Like a mandate isn't going to move them. Like it's only going to galvanize a lot of people into like moving closer. At least that's what it feels like to me. That they're going to galvanize people into moving closer into positions like my fucking crazy neighbor that thinks that this is somehow like population control and eugenics. And I don't know how, like, because I genuinely want to try to help somehow, like, because I guess because I speak righty, you know what I'm saying? Like I want to figure out like how to fucking like reach people without being like, yeah, you dumb fuck, you should just get the vaccination.
I mean, I'm not opposed to finding ways to convince them. It just seems like the convincing process isn't really working, right? I mean, these people were like super anti-vax before the vaccine was mandated or even close to being mandated. It seems like whatever paranoia is driving them to their positions doesn't really have much to do with reality. And I guess I would rather them like be forced to be vaccinated and steam about it than I would like wait months or years or maybe forever for them to like arrive at that change of mind on their own. And I have no idea if that'll ever happen, right?
But like, okay, all right. So did you get every like flu like updated vaccine that came out?
I've never got a flu shot.
Yeah, I haven't either. And like, I don't know, maybe we did lead to somebody's death. Like it wasn't in the same numbers, I guess, as COVID, or in the same, it didn't, it doesn't evolve at the same like speed that COVID does, I guess. But like,
I mean, you can make that
you
argument,
you
but
see
like
where I'm going with this? Like,
yeah, but we're talking about pretty significant degrees of scale, right? I mean, if you want, like, you could make the argument that by buying a car, the, you know, fossil fuel gases that you exhume, like, choke the city that you're in, and maybe one extra person died of lung cancer. That happens. That's not made up. That really happens. There are different rates of death by lung cancer depending on where in the country you live. But there's obviously a point where we have to like involve policy, right? Because if you want to run down that road, you could sort of incrementally implicate everyone potentially for some kind of stochastic murder. With this, we're dealing with an immediate pandemic. It's the largest mass death event in American history, or at least it's about to be. It's going to surpass the Civil War very soon. So this is definitely something that requires that immediate action. I think it goes beyond just like whether that one person causes another death, and towards like the responsibility to the world, like a global plague that we can only stop if everyone no longer has it.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to like. I have more questions, but I feel like I don't want to like. I don't know. I don't want to push back on it too hard. I don't like.
No,
I
no,
always
I
feel
get it. It's just
uncomfortable pushing back on it because I don't want to give like dipshits arguments against like getting vaccinated. I guess.
if there were, I mean, if there was, if we just, I guess, if we had a better solution, then that would be it for me. I think. I mean, that would be it. I want to involve everyone in this process. I think we should all believe in the necessity of these vaccinations, but it's like the right doesn't really seem to be on board with whatever negotiation would be necessary to do that, you know? Trump got booed at
Yeah.
a rally for saying folks should be vaccinated. Not even saying
Yeah,
we should
I
do a
saw that.
vaccine mandate.
Just for saying that he got it, yeah, and that it
Yeah,
worked or whatever. Yeah.
like that's what we're dealing with right now. So I think we're beyond the potential for like rational argumentation being the way forward. It seems like the state and the force of the state are the only real way to address this issue. And I think at the end of the day, that's a pro-freedom position because they are imposing on others' freedoms by selfishly preventing us from addressing the pandemic,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Okay, yeah, so let's do another thing we probably maybe disagree a little bit about.
Yeah, hit me up.
Whenever you were talking with, what was it? When you were talking with Irrelevant,
Mm-hmm.
and you're talking about like socialism and stuff like that, like I would, and you like brought up Hassan and stuff. I'm totally okay with. I don't know why he was so afraid to like say that that it was like a hypocrisy argument because
Me
I'm
either.
curious about this too, and like where you draw the line with this, and like I even mentioned it a little bit too because I was just genuinely curious. But obviously, this is where like we're in person, and that was something that made me think about it, I guess too, because it was like I was genuinely curious to know because I've said a lot of these things in private, and I'm like, yeah, Vaush doesn't do shit for fucking like whatever, and then I like, okay, let me look into this to make sure, like, and you've done a lot more than a lot of other socialist pundits, so I got to give you like credit for that.
Thank you.
But like I guess where, yeah, like where do you draw the line, and not just with socialist pundits but look with any pundit, like when are they supposed to, like let's say it was the complete reverse world, and it's like we're living in a socialist world or a communist world, and these people think that like capitalism is the best, but they're, you know, they're still just participating in their worker communes like every day. Like it could go either way. Like anybody who's a political pundit, because I get really fucking irritated, especially being on the right, because I feel like there's nobody really left that. So this will kind of tie into like something else that I was thinking about while we were at that Free Future festival. But like there's no really like traditional Republicans left. There's no Republicans left that still believe in like the liberal consensus. Still believe, like at one point both the parties shared, you know, a basic, an underlying like idea of what the government was there to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that liberal consensus is like, you know, the government is here to regulate business, provide a basic social safety net, and promote infrastructure. And both parties had shared these ideals at one point, or these like approaches at one point, and it was just how they got there was different, right? So this policy might be and that's why I feel like I find myself a little bit more on the right, is just because I feel like, yeah, maybe we should orient ourselves a little bit more towards business, but not in the sense that we just need to go like 1920s Republicans where we just, cut all the fucking taxes and then, you know, go through another depression.
Mhm.
But so yeah, I guess like when does it become like hypocrisy? When should you draw the line? When should you like call out your, or does it even matter? I guess.
I guess for me, the driving issue isn't necessarily hypocrisy, but like the good that you're getting from a person's behavior. So hypocrisy, I don't think is necessarily bad, right? So like for instance, let's say that like there's a person who really hates women. Like ideologically, they think women are inferior to men. They think that women should be treated poorly. But then like he's nice to a woman. That was technically like a hypocritical action, right? But I would still applaud it because I think that hypocrisy is good when it means that you're being hypocritical in favor of good behavior. So I just try to focus a little bit more on like what the actual actions are. Like what are you doing and what consequences is that behavior having? The issue that I
Yeah.
have, I guess, is that also when we talk about hypocrisy in a political context, so often it's very abstracted hypocrisy. So like hypocrisy in a very direct sense is saying, I think people should do X, and then they do another thing, right? Directly. But oftentimes it gets kind of like fuzzy. It's like, okay, well, they're not directly doing a thing that they said they wouldn't do. It's more like they're not acting fully in the spirit of a thing they should believe in. But if that's what we're reducing it to, I think that type of hypocrisy encompasses pretty much all humans on Earth, right? So for instance, like, I think you should stay calm in heated situations when arguing with people. But Lord knows I haven't done that. I think that it's
Yeah.
important to like, like give money to homeless people when you walk by them, which I try to often, but I haven't done it every time. Sometimes I, out of personal convenience, have avoided doing so. So if you were to criticize me for my behavior, like say I'm rude to a person, but I typically say stuff like it's important to be nice, it feels odd to focus on the hypocrisy when you could just focus on the badness of the behavior, which is what we do interpersonally. We don't go up to a person who's been mean and say, "You're a hypocrite. You said you should be nice, but you've been mean." Like, we don't really tend to
Well,
do that. We usually say, "Why were you mean? Why did you
but
do
you
that?"
kind of, but something you mostly only have their word to go off of too, to some degree, because like, like I consider myself somewhat like a Christian.
Hmm?
There's probably more spiritual than like religious, but like I was raised Christian. I've studied, like I've read the Quran and I've studied like Buddhism and other stuff like that. But, but like, so I to some degree I like base my morals around that. Like you don't know what someone is basing their morals around. So it's not, I guess it's not that simple every time to
Hmm?
like say like what people think is good and bad. I guess.
Yeah, but well, that would be my. I mean, I guess that would be my argument, right? I don't think it matters what your morals are. I think it only matters what mine are, and I think you think the same way, right? Like, for instance, it like with if like nobody looks at the Taliban and goes like, "Oh, okay, well they're being consistent with their ethical system. Good." Like, no, nobody thinks that way. We think their ethical system is bad. The things they're doing are bad,
Yeah,
and we should.
true.
So,
Okay.
so like sometimes I think calling out hypocrisy can be useful, but usually because they're being hypocritical in a way that's harmful or like you're trying to undermine the ideology sort of at its face value. So to bring it all the way back, like to the more like immediate thing we're talking about, which is like, do socialists who do like online platforms do enough? Like, are they doing enough? Right? Because that's kind of like the question. Are they living their
Yeah.
values? And my thought on this is we should always encourage them to do more, but them not doing enough is still better than them not having existed at all, right? Like, it's kind of a fuzzy or arbitrary standard, like how much should you do before people no longer have the right to attack you for being a hypocrite? Take Martin Luther King Jr., right? I mean, foundational speaker, theorist, civil rights leader, okay? But he didn't spend all of his time campaigning and protesting, right? I mean, nobody does, really. He definitely took time off for himself. So, would if we were upset by him taking that time off, would we call him a hypocrite? Like, you claim to be a civil rights leader, but you're not doing as much as I think you should be. Or would we just try to encourage him to do more? The hypocrisy thing quickly becomes vague and undefinable, and it just seems like a way of attacking people in a non-productive sense. Like, you're not really encouraging more of the good behavior. You're just kind of not a fan of that guy. It's the reason why I don't like Jimmy Dore, for example, because Jimmy Dore does this constantly, you know? He'll attack AOC or Bernie Sanders by saying, you know, you're a hypocrite. You were
Yeah,
elected
I
to
used to
represent.
listen to Jimmy Dore to try to like balance out like some of my like super conservative pundits that I used to listen to.
Well, yeah,
But
you're
like it
definitely getting
wasn't
a
a good
lot of
one.
balance on the anti-democrat bit. Yeah, no, exactly right. But he does that line all the time. The hypocrisy thing is his main thing. You know, he doesn't really attack moderate Democrats that often, and he never attacks Republicans. He's always attacking the AOC, Bernie Sanders, stuff like that. You know, and it's always the same line. You know, we elected you to be our representative. You're a hypocrite because you didn't do force the vote. You didn't do this. You didn't go to our Medicare for all rally. It was partially staffed by Nazis or whatever. And all this together has led me to believe that hypocrisy is a bad line to focus on. We should try to focus on it when we want to be good to a movement, encouraging them to do the best they can. And when we want to be bad to a movement, we should, I don't know, just try to just tear it down if you want, right? I mean, but
Yeah.
if you want the health
But I
of the
mean,
movement, you should
I
focus on
guess
what they
like
can do.
but I mean, like I know, like if I, like that I'm Christian now, like like I've told you, like or anyone who's Christian, like you would be, like if they were out like violating the Ten Commandments, like you would probably shit on them for that.
Sure, but wouldn't that be because it was bad of them to violate the Ten Commandments more so than because of the hypocrisy? Because, my friend, you
Yeah,
do
but what
not
if you
follow all
don't
the rules
believe
in
in
the
the Ten
Bible.
Commandments? Like, what if you're like just like super, like you just believe that everything is like like I always get it's like subjective or
Like
yeah,
a
you don't
moral
believe anything is
anti-realist?
subjective. Like yeah, so you just it
Well,
just to
I still don't think you should murder people, right? I don't really care if another person like covets another idol or whatever whatever the other ones I wouldn't care about are. But I mean, there are still things in the Ten Commandments I would agree with. But if not for that, if your point is like you know, uh, let's say it's another one like coveting another idol, right? Like something I wouldn't care about because it's not tied to my system of morals, you know. And there was
yeah.
a Christian who did that, you know. You could call them a hypocrite, sure, but have you followed all the rules in the Bible? Because I bet you if I read the whole damn thing
Oh
through,
no.
right. So
Me
what if
personally no.
so what if they turned around? They're like, well, you're a hypocrite because you haven't followed these rules. And then you're like, okay, well, well, this is the Ten Commandments. This is bigger than just the rules in the Bible. And he's like, okay, well, here's 70 rules in the Bible that you haven't followed. So does that add up to being more than one Ten Commandment rule? And you could be like, well, I don't know. And it seems like it just leads to really bad discourse. The best that you can get is like, don't you think as a Christian you should be doing this thing? Which is more of an appeal to like the fundamental value of that behavior more so than like the idea that if you betray that value it means you're not part of that group anymore. I think everyone's hypocritical to some extent. If you like look at
Yeah,
everyone's lives, we all
that's fair
betray our
enough, yeah.
values sometimes, right?
Yeah, because I mean like breaking the Ten Commandments or whatever, like doing a sin doesn't make you not a Christian anymore. Like
Yeah,
there's
right, like
people
even
that
some of
would
the bad,
argue
like
that like yeah you're not a good Christian anymore or you're not as good of a Christian anymore or like whatever. But
they're Christian
yeah,
murderers,
I
you know.
can see the okay. Yeah, I can see the one
And
that you're making there.
that's also how priests talk as well, right? If you could be.
So and to relate it to like me, like it's better to have another Christian than to not have one at all. Like,
I,
it's just better to have another one that's doing a lot of sins than to just not have one.
well, I guess it would.
If I
I
had to
mean,
make this relatable to me, like or
if
whatever, because
if
I don't,
if
I
the
don't necessarily agree with socialism, but like,
right. If the person was being hypocritical in ways that were detrimental, but the overall like benefit you got from them being a Christian exceeded whatever harm was produced by their hypocrisy, I would say so, yeah. Because priests talk that way, don't they? If you go to a
so the
priest and confess your sins to them, or like talk with them about what you've done that's fucked up, they won't like remove you from Christianity, even if you've betrayed like multiple Ten
yeah,
Commandments. Yeah, they'll try to say like, we've all made mistakes, but you should work to better yourself, and that's because
just
they
keep
care.
tithing, bitch.
Yeah, well, they care about keeping their numbers up, and they care about maintaining the internal cohesion of the Christian doctrine, because they
Yeah,
knew that if they went hardcore purity warrior and started calling out every Christian who's ever been hypocritical, pretty soon all
yeah,
we'd have left is the Pope, and then he would shoot himself in the head. So yeah, we'd run out pretty quickly, you know?
yeah. Okay, so then I guess then what do you think? So you think that there's a lot more value in That's your position then. Do you think that there's just much more value in like someone like Hassan, because I guess that's what you guys were referencing a lot, was
Yeah.
like someone like Hassan being a pundit for like socialism, than there is like basically the benefits like or the good outweighs the bad. Like just him being there and being a pundit, reaching however many millions of people he reaches is much better than not having him in that position, I guess, or not having him on the team, so to speak,
Yeah,
or
and I
whatever.
think I think he I think he does a lot of good, and it's about maintaining the health of the movement, right? Because the hypocrisy spiral doesn't have a line that you stop at. It goes on forever. Like, what if there's a YouTuber who's not like a hardcore socialist or whatever, you know? Let's say they're like a big gaming YouTuber. And they talk with Hassan or with me or you know, somebody, and they move over and they become like maybe a little socialist leaning, like they get the arguments, you know, right? And then they talk about it a little bit on their streams and in their YouTube videos. And then like a bunch of people on the left, the right, everywhere are like, you claim to be a socialist? You don't even have revenue share with your editors. Like you claim to be a socialist and you do this or that or the other. And like, in terms of the guy's movement, there's only been a good change. He went from not being a socialist to being a socialist. The change was positive. The only thing that happened, at least from my perspective, the only thing that happened in the world was good. But for some reason, a good thing being added to the world has added negative criticism to him, as though people are acting that things have gotten worse somehow. So I think that attitude discourages people from exploring these ideas because, let's be real, there is an effort to portray all of socialism as some kind of ascetic poverty cult. That's the reason why people are like, oh, you're a socialist, but you make money. And that does happen. And it's like, okay, well, you can make money as a socialist, man. Nobody said you couldn't. Read Marx. He won't say that you
Yeah,
can't. But they hyperfixate on it. Right-wing pundits do this all the time. And instead of actually addressing socialists' arguments, they're like, well, you have money, you're a capitalist because you have money, you're a bad socialist. And it's like, we don't actually get the argument. So that's why I just think it's a bad line to go down for everyone, in my opinion.
yeah. I guess so. Then also, then I guess the last thing on this thing that I was curious about is like, is there like once you reach a certain, because that was an interesting question I thought too. Like once you reach a certain uh like disposable income, like how, like is there some kind of a, like should there, do you think there is some kind of like obligation for you to like put like take action, I guess?
Yeah, I think the more income you have disposably, the better it is for you to do that, and the more it's acceptable to pressure people to do that. Yeah, for sure, for sure. But to me, that doesn't come in as a hypocrisy thing, more of a general, you do what you can with your means sort of thing. It like you would want to encourage the best possible behavior there. And I think, by the way, I think it's okay to like, you know, like be like attack or like criticize people on the left if you feel they're being like doing a bad job representing, you know. The issue is that's
Yeah.
kind of a discussion that I want being had in the community, because when it comes from out of the community, like you don't share my values, so you don't really care about
Yeah, I
making
was
this,
yeah.
yeah, you don't care about making the socialist community better or stronger. You would just
Yeah.
care about criticizing the people in it. So
Yeah.
I would be like
Oh,
suspect. It's like, oh,
but
you think you're improving the community by doing this, right? It's like, well, okay, maybe we should
yeah.
talk about that, you know?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I put myself in a little different just because like at the end of the day like I just give a shit. I just care about like fucking like whatever works. So like if it turns out in the fucking future that some kind of like combination of like the best things from socialism and the best things from capitalism are the new well, I don't know what we'll call it, but it won't be either capitalism or socialism. I'm totally down for that. Like I don't know what it'll be, but this new fucking system that's like the best that we've ever seen. I just think, you know, and I guess maybe this is my, so this will be like I probably our last, one of the last things we would probably disagree on, but like so I just have like this opinion of socialism that generally is more like I, this is something that I wanted to ask you in like the after panel is like uh how, I guess how are you so certain that socialism is like the way to go, like given its history, I guess, and would you be opposed to like something like what I just said, like the best from this and the best from that and the best from that, and then now we have this new system that's neither socialism nor communism nor capitalism or whatever the fuck, and it's just this whatever that keeps the country going. We find a new name for this shit.
Oh, what you're talking about, from my perspective, I call market socialism a sort of transitory state where we adopt the best positions from both ends, at least until we can adjust the material conditions that we live in to have a more permanent solution. So when it comes to like how I'm confident in socialism, my confidence in socialism doesn't derive from like the failed Soviet experiment or Mao's China or anything like that, because those countries were fucking horrible. So I wouldn't really base it in that. To me, I feel like there are a couple of principles rooted in liberalism and like classical liberalism, the kind that you would agree with, I think, like the idea that like free enterprise markets, right? Yeah, yeah. There are some principles.
On most of those stupid little political compass tests that I take, I end up being like classical liberal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right. And I think there are a lot of parts to classical liberalism that fucking rock. The concept of egalitarianism, for example, like that wasn't really much of a social value before the Enlightenment. So, and socialism is rooted in a response to the Enlightenment. But as I always understood it, socialism was, as Marx understood it, meant to be a way of patching some of the problems with how the Enlightenment attempted to achieve its values. So before capitalism, we had mercantile capitalism, you know, with you know, these big like trade syndicates that would work alongside monarchies and spread their influence across the globe. And you know, these were not free systems. Usually there was a direct link to the monarchy.
Wait, real quick, just so I can know what you're talking about. Like when you're talking about the Enlightenment, like you're talking about the Enlightenment era in like the 18th century.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, France,
like
and Italy,
the French Revolution and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
With their well, mercantile capitalism was not a very free system, you know. So I think a lot of Enlightenment thinkers thought, you know, we're promoting concepts like democracy, egalitarianism. Maybe one way to do that would be to promote a system of economic exchange utterly unfettered by antiquated concepts like a relationship to the aristocracy. So laissez-faire capitalism, which is what we have now, was born. And well,
I don't think we have laissez-faire capitalism, though. I think we've evolved a lot since then.
In the original sense, probably not. No, but even
it spawned from that. Sure, I wouldn't deny that it spawned from that.
Even Adam Smith advocated for some stuff that would be considered like borderline social democratic today. So there's a lot of variance, like historically, with you know what people's priorities were. But basically, I just think that capitalism has been ineffective in achieving the goals that the Enlightenment thinkers set out to achieve. The big issues with it essentially being that we found a way to outsource the aristocracy and make it an economic class rather than an entrenched political class, where now the most powerful people in the world outside of elected representatives of countries are businessmen who control essentially like the world economy, at least in part, by having direct autocratic control over institutions that companies and countries become reliant upon.
That's part of where like the Burkean like style of like conservatism, real conservatism, not like fucking whatever these dumb fucks want to run around and scream about now. Just to be clear, I'm not a conservative. I consider myself like a traditional Republican because those are like a real Burkean conservative believes in that liberal consensus that I spoke of earlier, and this was kind of to try to solve that issue, I think, because you're right, like those are the kind of things that they saw happening after like the French Revolution. Like all these people thought that like, oh well, this is the way things are going to go, but the reality is, and that's the same reason why, you know, I hate tankies probably just as much as you do, because all these dipshits think that, you know, you're going to have this crazy revolution and then you're going to be the one standing on the ashes at the end. But the reality is that all the people who have the money now are still going to have the money and the power whenever the dust settles. And that's kind of what happened to a degree. I'm not an expert on this.
I get that, because to me,
I have to reread a lot of this shit, but yeah.
To me, it's all, no, I agree completely. To me, it's all about incentive structures, you know? Because I think that I don't know if humans are naturally like greedy or good or bad or whatever, but I do know we're really good at setting rules for ourselves. And some societies will produce better behavior than others, you know? Like, we don't have ISIS here in the States. At least not directly. Other countries do. And I think that's ultimately a product of different incentive structures set up by their religious and political institutions. And when it comes to capitalism, you know, along with many other systems, I think that its chief failing is that it incentivizes reward structures that lead towards the consolidation of wealth. And because we tie wealth to power in our system, which has not always historically been the case. I mean, for a great, portion of human history, you could be the wealthiest merchant around, but you were still scum to the aristocracy. You were just another peasant. But now, of course, we have no real aristocracy. We have, well, I don't know, business
Not
kings.
out in the open. Yeah,
No, not out. Right. Of course, we don't have an explicit out and about monarchy. Our ruling class outside the people we elect are the people with the most economic power. And I think that all we've really done is we've transposed the problems with aristocracy. Because I know I'm rambling, but think about it, right? The old
no, I'm following. Yeah.
yeah, the old aristocracy, right? With its its castles and its lords and stuff. All you really had to do to be one of those back then is have a big enough army, conquer a castle, and then charge rents to the local serfs. That was
be born into the bloodline, or be born close enough to the bloodline that you could overthrow.
Right. That's it, right? Now, technically, this is a process that anyone could achieve. In reality, of course, it's almost overwhelmingly the relatives of nobles, but there have been historical exceptions, even women at times, as discriminated against as they were back then. And we agreed
Dude,
that was
women were running the show. Okay, I've done a lot of. I love history. I've had a recent inclination to dude, in a lot of, especially in the Roman Empire and even the oh man, yeah. There's so much.
I'll have to look
into
it.
There's so much. There's so much women influence in so much of the largest empires that have ever existed on the planet. It's crazy.
I'm glad they were girl bossing it up and all, But I guess the point that I'm trying to arrive at is that it was a system where some people had the freedom to control others. We decided it was bad. It was undemocratic. But now we have that same system all over again. Not as bad, but at the end of the day, what is a business owner's right to capitalize on a market but the right of the aristocrat to conquer a castle? At the end of the day, you can achieve both without violating the NAP, frankly. All you're really doing is changing corporate owners, which is why corporatocracy and feudalism so often overlap into practice. When you take a look at corporate towns back in the Old West, they really quickly turned into basically feudal states. We have just transposed the problems. The true solution, as I understand it, is economic democracy. It wasn't enough to have political democracy, because now economic means are the system by which you maintain an oligarchy. We need worker cooperatives to begin with, but maybe after we've done some work on that, we can work towards a more radical position of decommodification, so that the individual has, while no longer the power to control others in that way, much more autonomy over their average, over their lives.
Yeah, oh man, because I'm always trying to learn new things. I'm always trying to keep an open mind. I feel obviously I'm saying I feel like it's a feeling based off of the surface level knowledge that I have on this shit, but it seems that capitalism or some form of capitalism can solve a lot of these issues, and that's my only pushback to a lot of it's a more regulated capitalism could solve these things. So it seems with the. So what you were just talking about, can you repeat? Sorry, because I got a little distracted there. Can you just repeat what you just said a minute ago?
Sure.
The last 2 points that you made. I know you went through a lot of points. So I was
well, I didn't actually talk about the problems really outside of, I think, a perceived lack of democracy. I guess my real issue is that
it's
the incentive structure, right? If you have a system which incentivizes the mass consolidation of wealth by a small hierarchy, you have a system which is undemocratic, much in the same way that political wealth used to be accrued. We need an incentive
Okay,
structure.
sorry, because I remember what I was trying to say. What I was trying to get at was that, because if the government is there to be, the hierarchy over the hierarchy, even if you have these aristocratic,
that doesn't have to be the
families that are owning everything, if that should be the democratic process, right? You're voting, for your government officials, and your government officials should be regulating these businesses. So it's
oh, I don't trust the government for shit. Don't you look to me for that.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, I don't either. I'm pretty black-pilled, but if I mean, like, then how are you gonna? That doesn't make any sense to me, though. Then
Well,
that seems like,
self ownership. That's the first step, right? Worker cooperatives aren't
yeah, but
controlled by the
like,
government.
how the hell are you gonna get there if you don't trust it? Because you have to vote people into the government. Like you're a socialist, so you want to vote socialists into the government, right?
Hmm.
But you don't. But you don't trust the government like inherently.
No, I would
Like I'm
hope that
not
the
trying to
government.
call. I don't either necessarily. Like this is why I have an issue like getting like I've gotten involved in politics recently because I'm like, well, I think everybody should be, but
My big hope would be that we could use the government in ways to shift where the power lies. So right now that's really difficult to do because the government is very much in line with the interests of the bourgeois, the wealthy class. All of our politicians are wealthy. They all went to these wealthy schools full of other wealthy fucks. They're all alumni with we know who they talk to. Like politicians in the Senate and Congress don't like talk to people like you and me. They're very 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 much as a group entrenched in the
yeah, like
interests of the
federally
business
on
class.
like the federal level, yeah,
Yeah, of course, the
I would
local
agree,
you
yeah,
get. Like, there are city councilmen, I think, who are, like, sharp
yeah,
on it. And maybe even state officials can be more.
yeah,
But, like, on a national level, they're very
yeah,
much
I
in
would
there.
agree, yeah.
So, to me, like, the first thing you have to do is you have to eliminate the bourgeois. Not through violence, one hopes,
Thank God.
but as an economic class. The bourgeois, as an economic class, can only exist if it's possible to privately own business, because that's what's defining their existence. And that's also what leads to really unequal consolidation of wealth. So if you have worker cooperatives, at the very least, if you normalize them and you spread them, what you have then is a complete lack of the entire economic class that's calling the shots right now, or at least that has a disproportionate weight on what's taking place. You then have only the proletarians, and that's what Marx called the dictatorship of the proletariat. Not a literal dictatorship. That's not what the term meant back then. They didn't use it in that way, but rather a society tightly controlled, exclusively controlled by the working class. Something you can only really achieve if all there is the working class. And that government, won by the working class for the working class, is one that I would trust to make fairer judgments on some of the stuff, because it seems like they wouldn't have these influences that are affecting them negatively now.
Yeah, I can't get too deeper into that on it.
No,
Like I
no, no,
can't
no.
really
That's
push back
totally
on
fine.
that, to be
That's
honest.
just
Like I
that's
guess,
just my perspective on it. That's all.
yeah, and I respect that. I don't know. I still think that there's some balance somewhere. There's probably some, which I think you agreed to earlier. Like if there's some kind of like whatever I think you described it a little better, but like some kind of like balance between the best of all the systems that we currently know that could be achieved. But I still would argue that capitalism has done a lot more, and that to me, I think there is a healthy reason to be a little skeptical and a little hesitant when it comes to like socialism, just because of the history of what we've seen it do. Like
I
it
no,
sucks because I like in theory, like it makes a lot of sense, and in theory, it sounds really nice, and it sounds like yeah, something that I could get behind as someone who grew up extremely poor and in poverty, and has used like my mom. Like there's 8 kids in my family. I don't know if you
I did
know much
not.
about,
Goodness.
but like yeah, so there's 8 kids in my family, all from the same 2 parents. But like my mom left my dad whenever we were really young. It was like domestic abuse, whatever. One time done, she left. Boom, single parent raising 8 kids. Okay, if it wasn't for like a lot of the social safety nets we have in place, like I don't know if she could have not. Like she worked her ass off. She worked like 3 or 4 jobs. But like so, I can't really be like I can't really be like against social safety nets, being that that's the background that I came from. It's like, dude, I don't know if I would have made it. You know what I mean? So in theory, it seems like really nice, but in history, or how it's played out, it seems like kind of like terrifying.
No, 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 no.
So,
I totally get. I want you to
but at the end of the
understand.
day, I'm still a pragmatist, and I still am like, whatever the best solution
And
is what I want.
you know, of course, if you've you know if you've watched my content, and you know enough to have mentioned this, but I mean, I despise these tankies too. I don't ask you to trust in the history of socialism because I think that word has been bled out in so many negative ways. I'd ask you to trust in democracy. So if you could be encouraging towards, or at least accepting of, the cooperative project, I think that's the best vehicle we have right now for promoting the idea that economic democracy is good for Americans. And I wouldn't, these, oftentimes, like, conversations on socialism talk about these big sweeping social reforms, you know, like revolution or whatever. And while I don't
Yeah.
think those are like totally out of fit with the way the world works, because these things do happen, and well, I'll say this much: if revolutionary action is going to happen, I'd rather we have talked about it beforehand than not. I'll say that much. But I don't think socialism is about that. I
Yeah,
think
if it's like just for the memes, like yeah, if this shit happened right now, I feel like there'd be so many different people on so many different pages. It'd be insane. Like at least from what I see in like the internet memes.
I don't
But
think it would go well for anyone. I'll say that
no,
much. I, I think that past all of it, it's not about those big sweeping things, but about smaller questions. You know, do you want to have control over the place that you work? You know, do you want it to be your economic class or another economic class with the majority power in a country? I think most people in those questions would answer in ways that sort of affirm my position. The real issue is, do you think that's possible? And I think it is. And I only ask that you be open to those possibilities.
I'm open. Okay, like I try not to be like fucking. I try not to be close by, but like I try to put myself too in, because I've been in this position too. Like I I try to put myself in a position of like being the creator, being like the idea behind the project, like or like being a chef or being like, because I've done that before and like or I'm doing it currently, but like and then like my wife's grandfather is teaching me how to like make wooden toys, and
Oh,
it's like if I started a business and like this is all my idea, like I'm the one who has all the idea, like this is knowledge been passed down for however whatever, and you're the one that's, and this is more niche than some other businesses that could be done more co-optively, but
mhm.
like in that case, it's like much how much do your workers really or are they really entitled to you? You know what I mean?
Well,
And again, like I understand this is a more niche situation, but like
is the toy maker always the owner? So you act as though expertise and deep
shouldn't
emotional.
they be?
Well, that would be my argument. Because oftentimes, you know, some of the hardest working people at these companies aren't really the owners. CEOs come and go, you know, shareholders literally buy into their positions, oftentimes. But when we're talking about real passion, that's usually the people on the ground. At pharmaceutical companies, it's not their CEOs and shareholders that are doing the work, right? It's the doctors and the pharmacists and the
Doctors and the
researchers.
chemists and the yeah,
Right,
okay.
right. But those
Well,
people don't own shit, you know? They can be fired after a project is done. They can
but
strike,
also
unionize, and
like
that could be
okay,
that.
but like if you're born into this, like okay, let's say for the memes, you're Trump, you know, instead of the current Trump we have, you're Trump. You're born into like
Well, thank you.
now you're the Trump child, okay, and you have all this fortune to like do whatever you wish. Like, and if you pour this amount of like capital into some business, and instead of failing and losing all your fucking net worth, you pour it into something like reliable and something that can increase in, you know, and like don't you aren't you entitled to, even though like maybe you didn't earn anything, like your parents were the ones who earned something, but you were born into this like wealth, like isn't there something to be like isn't that person like owed something to some degree, like
You can benefit from investments without actually owning anything directly, right? I mean,
yeah.
theoretically, like the stock market, as we understand it, pertains to both investment and ownership. But you could imagine that really, you know, investment becomes a more literal process, not in owning a share of the company, but rather you
But I
participate in
guess
funding it
sorry,
early
because I
on.
just maybe I wasn't clear enough. Like,
Mhm.
but is this so? Maybe I guess is this something that you like believe in? Like, should that be a thing, or like
Should a person being able to inherit money from their parents being a thing?
that, and then also like like if you like you're let's say you're just born into wealth, and then you invest this capital into whatever business, like you don't. Do you think that you're entitled to some like a larger portion of the earnings than your workers are? Like, because yes, they like you might have people under you who are coming up with much better ideas than you probably could ever come up with, but and those people are getting more than the people under them, and so on and so forth. But
Well, a
like the
cooperative
gap between you at the top and the people at the bottom is pretty massive.
a cooperative doesn't necessarily mean everyone has to be paid the exact same amount, right? Like, if you had a market socialist economy where you still had like a market economy, but everything was cooperatively owned, I imagine most cooperatives would probably have like the elected managers or the elected like leaders of a business. They would, I mean, they would probably make more. I imagine their jobs would be more stressful potentially. At least I imagine they should be, right? Because they couldn't just sit on their laurels. They're not just an owner; they're a worker. They just happen to work at the top of that facility. So in that case, greater compensation, I think that's very justifiable, you know? And you would have to set internal rules. You could limit the wage of the person on top as a percentage of the wage of the lowest paid person, which Mondragon does. I think there are ways to
Yeah, I've
manage
heard
all
of
of
that.
that. Yeah, yeah. Now, I don't think Mondragon is perfect or anything, but I think there are ways to do that, and sort of get good outcomes from it. If what you're asking me fundamentally is like the broader question, you know, is a man entitled to the sweat of his brow? My answer is only if every other man is too. So if you're getting compensation for what you do, I think that's great, right? But if your compensation or your ownership or your power is disempowering other people only because they just happen to be less lucky than you, they just happen to be born with less wealth or invest in the wrong things, that's what I would take issue with.
Okay.
Though you have to admit, a world in which no one would ever even think to inherit anything would be kind of a nice one, wouldn't it? I mean, like theoretically, like Star Trek shit. I mean, if you could,
Okay, actually, all right, wait. Because I've said this before, like a, okay, fuck, what was it that I said? Socialism in a post scarcity society or whatever, like,
oh yeah,
or
yeah.
yeah, I like all for it. Yeah,
Hmm?
if we're talking about like Star Trek, yeah, I'm here for it, man. If we're there, yeah, what the hell do we have to? Yeah, UBI for everybody. We're mining asteroids out in the asteroid belt that are worth quadrillions worth of fucking like resources. Like we have platinum asteroids out in the belt right now, and I feel like the first person to get out there is gonna destroy the economy, for at least for our country. Because I'm pretty sure not to be like, I mean, look, USA number one, but it's got to be a USA getting there first. I mean, we got Bezos, we got Elon Musk,
It
and we got
seems likely.
whatever that other
Depends
guy
on how
is.
China does in the
It
coming
seems
decades.
like it. Yeah, I hope it is. Okay, but uh, yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to break our economy internally, but it will be beneficial, I think, worldwide because like we'll be
Does it ever
like so far ahead of everybody else.
does it ever seem odd to you that's the idea that excess and increased efficiency are actually economic problems? Because that wasn't always the case,
I
right?
didn't wait. I don't understand that question. I'm not gonna
The
lie to you.
idea that
Can you explain it to
finding
me?
like a bunch of rare earth minerals or like a ton of resources on an asteroid somewhere, the idea that that would like make our economy worse is kind of strange, isn't it? We have this right
Oh,
now with
yeah, a little
automation.
bit.
Like automation objectively improves the conditions for human lives. We find a way to do something without human labor involved. We've been doing this
But I
for
think it would do
millennia.
both, right? Like a little bit.
Right,
Like
but
whoever found it. Let's be honest. I feel like I have to not to get all like conspiratorial, but I feel like who like it would there would be some governmental forces involved. Like whoever goes out there and starts mining the first like platinum asteroid that's worth like
oh,
15
I'm sure
quadrillion
the
dollars or
feds would
whatever.
be
Like
all over it.
the US
I'm
is going
sure.
to be like, "Hey, let's keep this on the hush. We'll take it back to, Area 51. We're going to break this shit down. We're going to release it slowly into the economy. All right? You're the head boss. You
But
can call a lot of shots,
that's
but let's
that's
just
that's
chillax, okay?"
interesting though, right? Because in a way, it seems like the health of our economy is it expects that we never get too much. Infinite growth, but not too much. Because if we get too much all of a sudden, you have price crashes and stuff. And
Okay,
it's
well then, do you know about the? Okay, just to toss this onto the pile while we're talking. Like, do you know about the diamond market?
Right, how it's kept
currently.
artificially controlled
Yeah,
by hoarding
you can
the...
literally. That's why you can buy a saw blade, a diamond encrusted saw blade at fucking Lowe's. The diamond, and this is not like a conspiracy. Like you can look this shit
No,
up
it's literally, yeah, they
for
literally,
anybody
yeah.
listening. Like, yeah, I'm not just like memeing here. Like you can look it up. You can find diamond. There's diamond veins everywhere, all across the fucking world. You can. It's diamonds are just as
And you can make diamonds now.
occurring
It's
as like quartz or sand,
it's
whatever. Like you
cheap
can find them anywhere.
to
Yeah,
make them too.
yeah,
We can artificially make them with relative
yeah.
ease, I think.
But they started doing those between like the commercials, the way they were doing the commercials, like a diamond is everything or whatever the fuck, like
Right,
back in
yeah.
like the 20s or whatever. This is luckily this is something that me and both my wife knew about because I was like, look, I'm sorry, I'm not buying, I'm not paying, a couple $1,000s for gravel because the reality is that's how common it is. Okay, not to burst anybody's bubble, and sorry if you've bought your a significant other diamond, more power to you. But I'm just saying, okay, it's
They'll
gravel. You can find it anywhere on the planet if you just dig deep enough.
they'll get over it, I'm sure. Um, but no, I agree with you. This is one of the reasons why I think decommodification is a big part of the equation too. Not just the democracy element, right? Because there are some things that markets are really good at. I would never take away from that. I think that for like luxury goods, for example, if there's some degree of scarcity, I think markets are a fairly effective way of at least handling that scarcity and managing it. But it seems like for a lot of stuff, a market economy is kind of holding us back. Automation is a huge one. Like, the prospect of automation should be a civilization-changing boon for all of us. Suddenly, millions of humans who had to work on menial
Okay,
tasks
wait,
before...
not to pivot,
Uh-huh.
but I'm curious because I know I think I've seen or heard that you don't really like Yang very much, and
It's been
yet
known.
one of the reasons why I like Yang is because he's one of the only people talking about like automation and how how much of an issue it's going to become in the future. So like,
Don't worry, that's the one thing
I
that I
don't want
like
to
about
detract
him.
from what you were saying or like distract, but I don't want to forget to say it either because
No,
I
no,
was kind of
that's
curious.
the thing that I like about him. There's a lot of other stuff that I don't like pertaining to his approach and outreach, and how he wants to deal with it too, right? Because we have to ask these big questions about our economy. Like, what does it say about our economy? That something which is basically objectively good is threatening to put millions of people out of work. Shouldn't all the money
Right.
that was being made with the labor of the truck workers, for example, beforehand still exist? That money's just being made and kept by the companies associated with the transportation that they were doing. They've just found a way to skim more money off the top towards the wealthy. It seems like there are a lot of things that benefit our society in theory, but in practice, it's just another opportunity for the people on top of our market to skim more off the top. I think that we need to think like, hey, maybe there are elements of market economies that are not only do they sort of mandate inequality, but they're actually really inefficient at producing civilizational benefits from big, big boons. In my opinion.
Yeah, so okay. So then what is your wait, because sorry, I was trying to take notes because I didn't want to distract you from what you were saying before, because you were saying that you thought decommodification is pretty important. I just don't know where, like, what do you explain to me, like, what your ideal, like, because I've heard like some socialists or ANCAPs have argued to me like decommodification of like healthcare specifically, or like what do you mean when you say that a
Well,
focus on
I think healthcare is a big
decommodification?
one because healthcare doesn't work with a market incentive, Market incentives are all about, they're all about, the elasticity of prices. That's the fundamental thing, supply and demand. If something is overpriced, people won't buy it. But if it's, underpriced, they'll buy, quite a lot of it. But it doesn't work that way with healthcare or housing or food because you need those things. If insulin costs $1 a vial, people will buy it. If it costs 1,000, people will have to buy it. There's no choice. You do it or you die. So market incentives just don't work there. Our economy
Well,
shows it because we have a very market-driven healthcare
right.
system and we have a very inefficient outcome. A lot of human misery.
I can agree. Like, dude, I look, I'm all look. I understand that our healthcare like system is kind of like in shambles compared to other countries, but also at the same time we have like the best doctors in the world. So it's like
So how is that working?
I that's what I'm saying. Okay, like I want to understand this too. Like I
We have
like
the
you
best doctors in the world because we have the wealthiest people in the world. And those
right.
doctors are only
So
accessible to the wealthiest people. But for the
okay,
rest of
yes,
us, we get a whole other tier of, we get a whole
I
other
agree.
subset.
Okay, this is where we can agree. All right, and this is not like generally this is not common among a lot of people on the right. But I am someone who is in like support of a like utilizing our like 27% of our fucking budget that we spend on healthcare much better. But the only difference between like maybe me and someone on the left, like someone or some of the people that I've talked to on the left would probably be like, yeah, well, fucking like however much more we need to spend, like tax, whatever, increase tax, whatever we need to do to fix this shit.
Mhm.
I would just be like, we're already spending almost double every other country in the world percentage wise of our GDP or of our revenue on healthcare. So how about we fucking hold our government accountable and let's fix this shit, right?
Not gonna
Like,
find any fucking disagreement from me, man.
right.
100%
So that
ace.
would be the only difference between, yeah. So I don't know, man. But man, there's so
Do you
much
mind,
that
real
I
quick? I'm gonna let
pretty
my
sure I
cat
lost some of that.
out
But
1 second because they're being Oh,
yeah, true. I need to take a
yeah,
pee break because I've drank a couple of beers, so I have to break the seal.
yeah,
All right, cool.
yeah. There you go.
Pee break, cat break. Go.
Sorry, he toppled over a laundry basket and he was scraping at a closet door. Oh, did he leave too? Oh, he went to pee? Oh, cool, cool. Guys, I know we're all very cynical here, but is it wrong for me to say that I'm really happy with how the conversation's you know? Oh god, I was so, oh god, we get so few fun good conversations. It was cool to talk to in person too. I had a good time. What's that? Reddit has some new hot takes on monogamy. I can't do it, dude. Oh no. Please no. Please. 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 No. No. You can spend anything to be insecure. Polyamorous people are insecure because they're scared of being in the situation of having something to lose, so their solution is just not care in the first place. You can't lose if you don't play mentality. See, I did it too. I don't know if I would necessarily agree with that interpretation, but if you wanted to say that, then sure, there are probably people for whom that's unironically the case, yeah. Insecurity motivates a ton of human behavior the same way that food does, like being hungry does, you know? Like, insecurity is often described as a bad thing, but in reality, it's like a lizard brain emotion that we feel because it helps us maintain, like, social relationships. Everyone experiences insecurity. When we say a person is insecure, what we really mean is that they're too insecure or they're unjustifiably insecure.
All right, I'm back.
Oh, hey, what's up? What's up? Hello?
All right, yeah, I'm here. Sorry.
Howdy. Sorry, just making life more
Sticking my
difficult for my
headphones on.
editors by filling the discussion with irrelevant side chat, you know? How you doing?
Good. Better. Now that I'm relieved.
Nice. I let my cat out. They were trying to climb into a laundry basket and escaping into the closet and stuff. They were having a good time.
Do we want to do a side discussion real quick? Okay.
Wait, whatever you got in your mind. I probably got till the end of the hour because anything past that I got to do work.
Okay. I won't waste our time then. So I was gonna do a cats versus dog memes, but we could save that for another time.
What's your real quick then? What's your preference?
Okay, definitely dogs. Just
You
because
seem like more of a
look,
dog
I love cats, but I'm just not willing to give up an entire room of my house. Okay. Because you got to put the thing in there, and then they got to pee and poop in it. And it's like, why can't you just go outside?
You gotta
You
walk. I
know,
mean, yeah, but you got to go outside for that, man. That's a whole. That's a
I
big step for
mean,
people like me, you know.
true, but like they learn to hold it, just like we learn to hold it, right? Like we don't just pee and like okay, you hold it, all right. Like you go to sleep, you might have drank a little more than you wanted to. You go to sleep, and then you can hold it for like a couple hours, like whatever. Like you learn, right?
Yeah.
You don't pee every time you gotta
Hopefully.
pee.
Well, you know,
But
I mean,
cats,
eventually, yeah, that is where we are. But you know,
cats
hopefully, while I'm
refuse.
young and
Cats just
virile.
don't. Yeah, for now. But cats just don't give a fuck, man. They're just like I gotta pee and I'm gonna pee. Like I like if you don't have a litter box in here, I think you can train them to be outside, but it's like I think it's a lot harder, right?
Yeah, cats
I
are.
don't
I
know.
think the term is sigma.
It's is that the term?
Yeah, yeah, they're very ego-minded for sure, for sure. Anyway,
All right.
no, no, I
We were talking.
appreciate your opinion on animals and all. Yeah, what were we talking about?
We say we agreed because I think we should spend our 27% of our revenue, our budget, whatever tax budget on healthcare more efficiently rather than fund it more or something to
Hmm?
that extent. And then that came out of something about automation. I typed Yang automation and then decommodification with two question marks.
Yeah.
I
No, no,
don't know if
I
that rings any bells.
yeah, well, my issues with Yang have nothing to do with his
Oh yeah, true.
acknowledgement
Yeah, I was
of the
curious.
automation issues. No, it's I think that unfortunately he approaches it in a very tech bro-y way to me, which that sounds dumb, but
What does that mean? Yeah.
what I mean by that is the impression that I get from him is that he sees automation as a technical problem to overcome rather than a sort of a progenitor or a catalyst to meaningful social change. In essence, that there's this economic issue that I think from a lot of perspectives lends itself towards extremely like anti-capitalist or at the very least like capitalist critical takes, but rather than embrace those, he adopts a more technocratic perspective, you know, like okay, you know, we'll have this UBI and that's like sort of the big policy changer, which I like UBI, so I'm glad that's being brought up, but not as a way of really sort of advancing the working class's power relative to whatever changes are being brought about by that by the automation. It just seems like kind of a stopgap. Or he talks to me. It's like if a person was like talking about climate change and they were like, "Here's what we really need to do. Okay, we really need to build water walls around our coastal cities to protect it," and that was like their big thing. And it's like, that's
Wait,
your
what?
like no, yeah, like that's their big prescription. It's like, okay, climate change is coming, we need to build water walls so when the sea levels rise, our cities don't flood
Wait, is
like in
that a real
Florida.
thing?
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah, there are cities that already have it. New Orleans already has it because they're below sea level, but the sea level's rising, so it's gonna that
Holy shit.
it's something we're probably going to build more of. But like if that was the
Or
sorry,
just
I
move
think they're
out of
called
cities.
dikes, but I think they're called dikes, or levees, they're called levees.
Levies, yeah. Okay.
Levees,
I've
okay.
heard levies before, yeah.
Dikes are another thing, yeah. Sorry, yeah, I thought it was called dikes, but I didn't want to say it
You
because
sound
chat was
like
going to be
Dave Chappelle now.
chat was going to be immature about it, so I didn't want to. Yeah. But anyway, it's frustrating to me because it feels like we're so close to like a really meaningful solution, and we're I don't know if we're going to get it. So maybe Yang will be beneficial
Yeah.
historically because he started the discourse in a way that others haven't. But I'm hoping we can get a real, you know, like the fact that
Okay.
automation is an economic
Okay.
problem.
Tell me
Yeah.
what you think about this. All right. You ready for this? I hope that somehow because I've seen a lot of people that were like pissed that like Yang went on like Tucker Carlson or some shit and that he's been
Yeah.
like independent and that like a lot of people are like, what the fuck, man? And as a Yang, like I'm a Yang gang all the way. Okay, I was actually grassroots campaigning for Andrew Yang
Oh.
before this election. So even though like I ended up voting for Trump, but I I wanted a better solution, right? Like I wasn't like I felt like he was providing solutions, even though I probably disagree with like 2/3 of like fucking Andrew Yang's policy. But the way I see it is like if he were to get elected, probably 2/3 like 2/3 is probably policy probably wouldn't get passed through. But that even some of the stuff like UBI, which I thought probably definitely wouldn't get through, but at least it getting on the table would be beneficial in our future. Like how like what do you think about that? Like as far as like him getting like if somehow magically like he just got elected now, would it be more satisfactory to you? Uh, 'Cause I feel like a lot of people like on the left and the right, or the Democrat and the Republicans, don't really feel like those parties really represent them, and I
Yeah, well,
like
I
you probably
certainly, I
share that.
certainly
So
don't. I don't feel represented by the Democratic Party for sure. I guess the whole uh, the the third party thing has to be done to a good cause, right? I don't like what he's doing right now because it seems like he's breaking people off from the Democrats towards some sort of meaningless, like banal centrism. I also have a huge beef with like ideological neutrality. That really, really bugs me, right? So he says not left, not right, but forward. That's nonsense. No political theorist would ever, ever, ever say that.
come on, man, what do you mean though? But you
There's no
said
such
earlier
thing.
that like you're okay, okay, but all right, but well, do you believe in like the liberal consensus as I described it earlier? I can restate it if you probably forgot
Which
maybe.
consensus specifically?
So that like the government generally is there just as a broad generalization. The government is there to uh, provide a basic social safety net, promote infrastructure, and regulate business.
Yeah. Well, I know that it's something we sort of loosely arbitrate today. I don't know if there's any party that's like really adhering to that perfectly.
Yeah, but that's what I would. Okay, so I guess because I did a lot of like deep diving into like the Republican Party because I was trying to figure out like,
I'm
and this
curious
is
why you
something
voted for the big T. You know, it seems like you've got a lot of political positions that don't really
I
overlap.
well, some of these evolved later on. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. I was
Okay.
pretty. So before, have you ever read The True Believer by Eric Hoffman or
No,
Hoffer?
I
Hoffer.
think I've heard of it though,
It's a
but I haven't read
really,
it.
it's a really good book. If you want to audiobook it, it takes like I don't know, like 4 hours or something. It's really short actually but it's like a philosophy. This guy basically just studied mass movements and like how people get put into positions where, anyways, I fall into a lot of those tropes, unfortunately. And I was really susceptible to like populism. I went from like being a Bernie bro to I didn't vote in 2016, even though I could have, but I probably would have voted for Trump if I did. And that's only because I felt like the election was stolen from Bernie at the time. Like
Hmm.
I thought that I totally bought into like the Democrats. The Democrats like stole this from him and they conspired against him. Whatever. And it wasn't so bad then. Like I didn't really care too much then, but like especially during COVID, like I lost all my income. So after like I get married to my wife, we have everything's going for us. We're about to like have kids. And then it's just like boom, COVID, everything's fucking like done for. So it was like I was in a perfect position to be like, I don't know, influenced, I feel like. And not that I couldn't have done like more research and stuff, but like I don't know. I've just done a lot more fucking research now. If I feel like you would be able to relate if you it's hard. I don't want to go into like
You're
explaining
talking
y'all.
as though I don't understand.
Okay, well, I
It's not a position that I've been in myself, but I know a lot of people, and I'm friends with a fair number of people who are in similar positions. And I think what you're talking about speaks to a very deep distrust in and disillusionment towards the system that we have right now. And
yeah,
I'm betting one of the reasons why you like Yang is because he's a maverick, because he's a breath of fresh air, and because he does seem
yeah,
like an effective break to what is otherwise like an impenetrable, like bipartisan like wall that doesn't
yeah,
seem to move or budge. Yeah, I understand that.
yes. A lot more verbose than I would put it, but absolutely.
Yeah, no,
You probably get
yeah,
that though. So
brevity has never been my strong suit. No, I get that. I think the system as it exists right now, I guess I would defer to history on this one because the system as it exists right now is very gridlocked, but historically gridlocks aren't broken. through centrism or through an appeal to moderation. They're usually broken when countries collapse and the more radical wing takes over.
Okay, so but I don't know how much like history you've gone because I've gone into a lot more recently, and I don't know. Do you know who Heather Cox Richardson is?
Um, I'm afraid I do not know.
Okay, well I'm gonna try to push her onto you like I do everybody else, but
Hit
she's
me up.
awesome. She's a historian. She did a whole deep dive, especially because of Trump and everything. Like she did a whole deep dive into like the Republican Party, and like laid it out and just like enlightened, especially someone like me, to the party. And that's why I'm not. That's why I'm not like I don't have an issue necessarily with saying like yeah I'm a more like traditional Republican because when I say that I'm relating to someone more like Eisenhower who came along after well yeah, after FDR, after a like shitstorm of failures, whether it was between the economy and between foreign affairs and everything else that was going on at the time, like, and Eisenhower was like one of the most, probably like the greatest general in the history of America, and probably of the world at the time. And both parties wanted him to run for them, and he didn't run. It's straight out of like a comic book. It's like he didn't run until he had to, right? Like he saw the direction that the Republican Party was going. He saw that the Republican Party was heading in this direction of like ideology and separating from this like uh liberal consensus or whatever, and he still believed in that. And he had studied people like Eric Hoffman, and he studied like he had read like Nietzsche, and he had understood why, like philosophically, how like the Nazis got into believing like not just he didn't study like the dictator that was leading the people. He studied how a people or how a population, how a movement can be misled by such a person. You know what I mean? Because it even at the Freer Festival, I'm sure if we're in some like dire situation, like how all 10 of us or however many people were out there, so one person could become like some kind of like crazy dictator. But he studied, instead of that person, he studied like the actual person. Why does it show you green? It shows you like you're talking.
Oh, I have an open microphone. It's probably just
Oh,
hearing
I'm
me.
sorry. I just didn't know if I was like talking. I didn't know if we were disconnecting or something.
No, 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 not at all. No, I understand what
But
you're
yeah.
saying. I understand where you're coming from as well. I think, well, I think what I'm most concerned with is,
Oh, sorry, cause I got distracted. But real quick, I'll just try to end that.
oh sure.
So, but Eisenhower took like this approach he called like the middle way, and basically it was what I was talking about like earlier. Like you're just taking like the best positions of both sides, and a lot of people attacked, especially the Republicans started attacking him for this, and it was really what's his name? Not Robert Taft, that was the president, but Robert Taft Jr. So Robert Taft's son, who ended up being a senator. Robert Taft, the senator, eventually would go on to like join up with people like McCarthy, and then McCarthy's offspring like Roy Cohn would go on to mentor Trump. So it's like all these fucking people are all connected. Everyone that calls himself like a large uppercase C like conservative is all connected, and none of them have actual roots in some kind of like political solution. They're all ideologues, unfortunately. And what's even worse than that is that
You might be hitting on what I'm bothered about with Yang.
well, I'll finish, but this is what upsets me about the Republican Party currently, is because basically from Eisenhower onward, they started kicking people out, and it's really hard to like 30-second this, but like yeah, so they basically just started kicking out like traditional Republicans. They started kicking out anybody who agreed with the liberal consensus was basically like they were like, oh, well, this is just diet socialism. This is just diet communism. And anytime the government does anything for the people, that's communism. That's socialism. And get them the fuck out of here. And unfortunately, not only does this remove a lot of the voters from the Republican side that were like more in line with like the middle way and more like closer to the center where we could actually get along and agree and like get legislation passed. But then it galvanized the left because like the Democrats took advantage of this wholeheartedly, and instead of like coming to the middle and coming to the table with ideas and having to agree on things, it's turning to in the extreme ends. What it is now is like you have the Democrats providing solutions, whether or not they're good or bad, it doesn't really matter because they're providing solutions, and the right or the Republicans are just opposing them, and it really fucking sucks because there should be some discussion there should be some kind of like conversation, but yeah, I don't
Well,
know.
you're not going to
I
see.
get really pissed off with Republicans in their current state because it's just a bunch of ideologues.
You're
They're
not going
just
to
yeah.
see much
I don't
disagreement from me on this, you know. I think the main problem that I have with Yang is that he is an ideologue. He's an ideologically driven anti-ideologue. This is what I mean about, I think, sort
He
of the
lost me.
it's the aesthetics. You said you
Okay.
liked, moving towards the center because you could pull the best positions from all sides. Now, I want the best
Yeah.
positions no matter where they come from. I don't agree with the Republican Party on pretty much anything, but I know there are other countries where there are different political parties that disagree with each other, but I would probably pull from solutions from all sides, you know? In theory, I think this is a wonderful thing. I think the issue that I have is that Yang doesn't actually offer that. What he offers is a kind of neutered milquetoast bipartisanship that aesthetizes moving towards the center, but in reality does nothing. This is one of the issues that I have. See, you said Eisenhower made people mad when he pulled from both sides, but Yang doesn't. If you take a look at his policy prescriptions or what he put on the People's Party or the Middle Party, Forward Party website, you know, he actually deliberately avoids subjects that are partisan between the Republicans and the Democrats. He isn't committing to anything that would isolate potential voters from either side, which means that he's not actually pulling the best from either side. He's pulling nothing, which means that, sure, maybe he won't get people on either side angry at him, but on the other hand, he's just more interested in making a name off of the aesthetic of bipartisanship. But you have to make people mad to be bipartisan. You have to, you know? And I guess my issue is, like, at the moment, that things are so politically partisan right now that even if I did agree with the Republican Party on some stuff, there's no way a person who pulled good ideas from both sides could ever succeed electorally. There's just too much bad blood. They would get shot down from both sides, you know?
Yeah, but man,
So
but
the best thing we can do,
historically
you fight through it.
that's happened several times though.
Well, it's happened before, sure, but we live in a radically different era when it comes to, like,
I
QAnon
just
did not exist in the past, right? I mean, we're in a pretty unique era when it comes to how
Dude, but
partisan
it
folks
did.
are.
It just wasn't in the same magnitude. Like, I don't know, man. Like, maybe this is just me being too much of an optimist, but like, I just, I don't know, man. Like, I'm
We need
doing
to
as much as I
adapt.
can, especially on like a local level, and in, like I'm willing to like find the best solution. Like, which is why like
Well,
where I am,
right,
like
right.
this is
The
why I'm
best
like
solution.
talking to like people like you who are like a socialist and fucking it's crazy because even like 6 months ago, like the panel that we were talking about tonight, like I don't know if you know, but like I was at January the 6th, like I was there, like I wasn't like full blown like fucking like ready to go run in there and like hurt somebody, but I was there because I wanted to like record things and because I thought I had this idea that like that Trump's side was being misrepresented. So I was like, well, I want, if I'm able to, I want to go live stream it and prove people wrong. So it wasn't necessarily that I was like
Were they proven
all
wrong?
in. Not really. To some degree, maybe. Like, because I was there for 3 weekends leading up to the 6th. So it was like the fuck. I can't remember how it played. It was like the Million MAGA March was one of them. I can't remember. It was like one, or it was like the Million MAGA March, and then another one, and then the 6th, something like that.
Hmm?
But I was there for all three of those, and people were donating so that I could go up there. But I realized too that like I don't know, I felt bad because I didn't really believe wholeheartedly the same way like I knew a lot of these people believed, and as easy as it would have been for me to just like super grift and just like continue to be like, yeah, fucking MAGA Trump 2020, I was still on my channel and I was like, you know, fuck it. Like, I I would have still rather voted for like Yang, and I'm still more of like a libertarian at the end of the day. Like, I don't necessarily believe like full blown like drug controller, full blown like even though I would still consider myself like somewhat like pro life. Uh, like my pro life position is like, well, if it's like rape or incest or assault, whatever, that's that could be like excused or whatever. Like I'm pretty fucking center on a lot of things. And a lot of even a lot of people knew that like I came from a position of I was like grassroots campaigning for Andrew Yang before this, and I never hid that. But like even still, some people on the right get really fucking irritated at me. I'm just like, look,
I
man, just because you didn't watch my other content doesn't change
I
that it is what it is, you know. So
I feel like we're in a position. I feel like we're in a position right now where a lot of people understand we're in a gridlock and a lot of people are offering solutions, but some of those solutions are going to be a lot better than others. I think Yang offers an appealing one, but ultimately a failed one. He's not, he's too toothless to really propose things that meaningfully address solution. I mean, like there's so much stuff that he hasn't touched on. Like the fact that the Forward Party that he's put forward has positions on automation and like third parties, but doesn't have any positions stated on like healthcare plans is really telling. You know, being willing to offend people, being willing to isolate people is just part of making strong decisions for the country. And I don't think he's ready to do that, or maybe he never will be. I don't.
okay, well, what do
Well,
you mean by that though? Like, I don't. I
I
feel like I know
mean
what you mean, but
he's selling you the aesthetic of centrism, but only that. That you're not going to get the real benefits. He's not going to take the both. He's not going to take the both from either side. He's going to take nothing from either side because to take anything from either side would be to limit his voter share. It's just a catch-all. It's a Venus flytrap. It's a way for people to think like they're breaking down the system when in reality they're less influential upon it than any other group. You know, that's the thing that worries
okay,
me.
but like, but if he got into, I don't know, man. I mean, it's hard to like speculate on that because it's hard to know, especially in this day and age. But I just feel like, honestly, even as much as I disagree with him on a lot of his policies, like I would prefer him over like any Republican or Democratic candidate currently.
What policies do you want put forward? Because it seems like he doesn't really have that many policy positions for you to draw
Well,
on.
he's at least bringing a lot of things to the table. So he's talking about like the and he's changed too. So I have to admit, like I haven't gone and looked at his like most current like policies, but I know the UBI was a really important one. The healthcare was a really important one, and I don't think either of those two would change between him running for president and him running for mayor. But especially when like just specifically like when he ran for mayor, and I was trying to push people to vote for him for New York City mayor because when I looked at him, excuse me, in comparison to all the other candidates that were running for New York City, like he had solutions. He had so much. Excuse me, sorry, I got some burps, but so much more like than all these other candidates did.
Yeah, I
Uh,
saw a lot of them debates, and it just seemed like all he was really willing to do was point out that he had
yeah,
solutions to these problems that nobody else was willing to address. But
I didn't watch the debates to be honest, but I
it,
looked at
it's
I
it's
looked at their websites and and like dude, even if you look at him, just his okay. So even just then in the gubernatorial race, but then also in the presidential race, like no one, and maybe you can be like, well, this is all bullshit. Like, but no one had even close to that amount of information on their website, and I feel like
on what though?
that it's just like because I feel like it's, all these politicians are fucking terrified to like put all this out there because then this becomes a list of like to do. This becomes a to do list, and then when they get in, if they get in, then you know, then they actually have to follow through or try to. So
Yeah, I mean, I've seen his some of his stuff. I don't know that much about the specific economic problems plaguing NYC, you know, as opposed to like what he's trying to do with this Forward Party thing. I think that his run for New York was certainly more defensible than what he's doing right now, because at least for the New York City mayoral run, he actually did like he did actually like address some issues, you know, put forward some
Yeah, he had
positions.
a bunch,
I guess
bro. Like,
I'm
it's crazy.
informed by my biases here significantly, but it seems to me like all Yang can really offer me is like he might do some of the things Biden would do, but not all of them. And he might also do things that I like quite a bit less than that. It's certainly not going to break political gridlock, right? I mean, what you have to
Mm.
do if you want to address this issue meaningfully is, well, first of all, you have to get rid of the two-party system. You know, Yang actually does have things to say about that, which I respect. But beyond that, you need to hardcore focus on particular political issues that you believe in and become the ideologue for those issues. Because if you look throughout history, stalemates have not been broken by the centrists. They've broken by the ideologues. The Civil War between the
But they
abolitionists,
have been though. Like with the like
not with this level of divide,
I'm not
though.
an ex. I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna try to pretend to be an expert on this, but like maybe specifically, like, uh, I'm hard focusing on Eisenhower because I really like Eisenhower, I guess. But like specifically with Eisenhower, like he was a really like centrist. Like he was much more of a pragmatist than anybody in our history, and his presidency was one of the best in our history. And like a lot of people don't know that a national health care was actually put on the table by an Eisenhower administration
What do you think
under
made him?
Eisenhower. Like
What do you think made him good?
because I think one of the things that made him the best was that he came from the military, and
But I
in the
mean, like,
military it's like
what did he
it's like
do that I should celebrate?
man, I can't name it off the top of, okay, so let me finish this first because
Sure.
okay, so what I think I made him the best as far as like approaching like solutions to problems was that he was looking for a solution, I guess.
But like, what solutions
Because
did he put forward? Right? Like, what? Like, if you were to like sum up his big achievements in office.
I'll have to pull up I have little notes on him because I really like him. But what I think why I think I guess because I'm not answering your question directly, but like why I think he was the way he was is because of military, is because you know, like an opinion can get people killed, but like a solution will save lives. So that's that's the major reason. I think he was willing to work with both
There are no
sides.
solutions without opinions, right?
Um,
You can only have a solution if you have an opinion on
yeah,
what
to
the metric for
some
victory is.
degree.
Like, how do you solve an issue without an ideological bias, right? What about, let's say drug use, right? Do you think it is a victory in our country for cities to provide clean needles and free heroin to addicts?
Um, wait, say that again.
For our cities to provide clean needles and free heroin to addicts? Do you think that's like a victory for our
Actually,
city?
well, it depends on how you do it, but a little bit actually. I'm a lot more liberal on this than probably everyone on the right. But yeah, actually, I'm actually all for like clean usage.
Do you
I
think that the fact that that is a solution to you is ideologically informed? Because I bet you there are a lot of
uh
people who also voted for Trump who would say that is by absolutely no means a solution to, or even an addressal of, our problems.
I
It's always an
shit, man.
ideological bias. You even have
Maybe I
Republicans
guess it's
too,
from more like maybe from experience more than it is like ideological though,
but
because like
towards what end?
because I've been around people like this and I've done my fair share of like drugs to know that like yeah, drugs can be like super like addictive and stuff, and it's not necessarily the case that this is a problem that's going to happen regardless of whether we address it or ignore it.
So,
You know what I mean?
why should the state subsidize their addiction? Why should tax dollars from poor families be used
Um,
on
be,
giving heroin to these
because in the
degenerates?
because at the end of the day, it's probably much cheaper than sending them to jail and sending them to prison and letting them live off our tax dollar, letting them get put in there with people who are like rapists and murderers, et cetera, and become and catch more charges and get put in there for even longer periods of time. Like,
So,
actually,
should we coddle every class of criminals? Maybe punishment is what they deserve.
no, I actually, I actually think there should be like two separate classes of like punishment for crime. So like anything that's like sexual assault on another human being, like beating or murdering, whatever, should go into like one place, and like the other place should be like everything less than that. Basically, should be like rehabilitation.
I think that criminals are criminals. I don't understand why we should be concerned with their rehabilitation. Prisons exist to punish prisoners, don't they? We don't want them around us, and we certainly don't want them to be incentivized to
Yeah,
engage
but
in
I'm
their bad
pretty sure
behavior.
like if we've talked about like earlier, like everybody's done their like everybody's broken their like some tenet or some law or some like
You're making a lot of
but
ideological claims, you know. You're making should statements. Now, it's true, you're right. By the
maybe.
way, everything you're saying, by the way, I agree with completely. But it goes beyond what saves the most money, right? Talk to a Republican about what saves the most money, and they'll blink at you, right?
Well, I
Talk to them
fucking
about
do
what
this, and
punishes bad
it's
people.
I
And
trust me. Yeah,
solutions
it's
are
fucking.
ideological. So
I do this in my
non-ideological politics can be kind of counterproductive.
yeah, and I try to do this as much as I can in like my city and stuff, and I try to bring this stuff up, but it's like it's pretty fucking hard.
Oh, no,
Um,
no, for sure, right? But the reason why it's difficult
but
isn't
I mean,
just
I feel like it's better than nothing though.
it's
So.
not not the numbers though, right? Because I've had this conversation with people, and I know for a fact that you can mathematically demonstrate the fact that some policies with regards to drug usage are cheaper for the state than other ones, but they don't care, do they? It goes the same to the
Yeah.
state providing free contraception. Because I had that convo like 20 times, right? You can say it is objectively, provably, mathematically cheaper for the state to provide free contraceptives, you know, here, here, and here, than it is for us to just wait for people to make mistakes, and then invariably crime raises because of poor family planning, et cetera, et cetera.
So, but
But
like,
but if you have that conversation with a Republican, oftentimes they will not care. Even if you tell them it's cheaper, they don't care. They don't budge. Even if they believe that it's cheaper, they don't care, because their goal isn't your goal. Their goal isn't what makes it cheaper. Their goal is what best punishes the groups who they believe have engaged in deviancy. To them,
right,
the
but
solution
that's
isn't.
current. I agree with you, but like that's current Republicans, like,
But that's what I
which really
mean.
sucks. Like,
Their solutions are ideological. And you and I can only agree on this because we both share an ideological bias, right? We both believe that in this case, human health and happiness, along with the saving of tax dollars, is what matters, because that's what we think leads to a best society. But there are people who think that the best societies are one which wickedly punish those who commit sin. And I can't convince them that I'm right just by showing them better data sheets. The only way for me to convince them that I'm right is by winning, building a better world, and then pointing at it and looking at them smugly while they change their mind, if they change their mind. And that's what I'm talking about with people like Yang, right? And breaking these filibusters. You can't do it with centrism, not when we're at this point, not when people don't even agree on what reality we're in anymore. You have to do
yeah,
it by
but that's
breaking it.
but the same kind of like severity of like the ideological differences this was happening like when Eisenhower decided to run.
This
Like
severity?
the yeah, it was
I don't
it was
believe. I don't
really
think that.
serious, man. Like people, basically the Republicans at the time were like, no, we need to go back to like the 1920s. We need to like deregulate everything. And the Democrats were like, no, we need to go like even further with like FDR's like um fuck New Deal. Like we need to go more New Deal, and and somehow Eisenhower was able to like step into the position. And yeah, I mean like I found some of my stuff, but like he kept America at peace for like the long, like one of a few, like just a couple presidents. I think actually Trump was one of the only other ones, which not to, you know, but that didn't go to a or didn't start a new war. I guess technically he was still at war because of the
I'm
Iraqi
proud
war,
of
whatever.
him for not doing
But
that.
Eisenhower, it was Eisenhower, and then like ended the. Well, he was coming into at the end of the Korean War and refused to like go back to war. He was one of the. I think it was Eisenhower balanced the budget, and then the only other president besides him to do that was Bill Clinton.
You're not going to get me, by the way, to disagree. Everything I know about Eisenhower, he seems like he was one of the better presidents. And, you know, I don't like American presidents that much, so that's a high note of praise from me. It's just, I think there are
Yeah,
times when
and
moderation works, and then there are times when moderation doesn't. And
well,
right
this
now,
is what
we see what moderation looks like, right? With like Joe Manchin and stuff. I mean, all that really does is participate in the stopgap. Just another nut or bolt thrown into the machine.
Yeah. And I don't know a whole lot about Joe Manchin. I actually know more about Joe Manchin mainly because the left bitches about him so much than I do from studying myself. I
As
try
we
to
will
focus
keep
more on
doing
like the
so,
right
absolutely.
side, but
Yeah.
yeah, I hear a lot of people on the left like bitch. That's literally the only reason I know about Joe Manchin, because I try to focus more like on the right because I'm trying to like fix that, or I think I can fix that. I don't know. It's just me against the fucking world, but you know,
I'm
I'm
wishing you
trying.
luck over here. I can't imagine. Look, whatever our disagreements may be, there's no conceivable way you can make the right any worse. So please have at it. Um, I No, I understand where you're coming from. I think there are some deep disagreements here that might be born out of relative degrees of cynicism or optimism, but I think that, like, fundamentally, I think that your motivations and your desires are relatable and understandable. I have to go soon. I've already pushed this stream like hours over its intended length, but I really appreciate you coming on and talking with me.
Do you want to do the Dave Chappelle at all, or do you just want to like cut it? I understand either way. I don't really care. I feel like Dave Chappelle would probably agree a lot more.
Tomorrow's Monday, right?
Yeah, I'm off tomorrow though. So
Monday.
I'm
Do I
off.
have any? I'm trying to think if I have any things. Do you want to come on tomorrow?
Sure. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. I should be streaming for a good chunk tomorrow. Yeah. Okay. Tomorrow's. Yeah. Today's Sunday.
Wins.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good. All right. Just gotta. Yeah. All right. I don't get out that much. I don't know. Do you work a job outside of streaming?
I do. Yeah.
Okay,
I work like
all
80 hours a week.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. Nice. That's
But,
wow. That's a lot.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, but like I said, I'm off tomorrow. And the next day. So yeah.
Gotcha.
So
All right. Then we'll
if we
continue
wanna
the
do it.
conversation then.
Sweet. All right. Well, it was fun, man. I
You
really
take care.
appreciate it.